Hey everyone, welcome to Crushing Classical, redefining a thriving classical music career. I'm Tracy Friedlander, and today on the show I have Kevin Oates, who founded Maine Youth Rock Orchestra, or MYRO. In this episode, Kevin talks about his path from school orchestra director to youth orchestra founder. In his program, classically trained music students collaborate with rock bands and perform concerts and tour together. Hear how Kevin launched his program, what inspired him to do it, and the unique aspects of partnering in orchestra with rock bands. Not only do they receive a music education, but also an unexpected educational experience, learning about building an audience, paying attention to audience experience, and creating their own digital presence on social media as a musician in today's world. Before we get started, I'd like to thank Fix Music for sponsoring Crushing Classical Podcast. FixMusic.com is your online resource for high-quality and affordable sheet music. There are some new offerings at Fix available that you'll want to know about. Now there's organ music, a large choral music selection, as well as orchestra parts that you would need for concerts or auditions. And now they are actively working with choral and orchestra directors to help plan seasons. So if you're a program director and you want help on choosing pieces for your season, contact Fix Music today through their website. And as always, free shipping on all domestic orders. Check out fixmusic.com for your sheet music needs and use the link in the show notes to receive 10% off your first order. Let's get started. So welcome to the show, Kevin. I'm so glad to have you
Thank
here.
you. This is awesome. I'm really glad to be here as well.
So great. So I discovered you on Instagram. Just doing the Instagram thing, you find so many cool people doing cool things. So it's really inspiring now.
Thank you, Instagram. Oh my gosh, it's changed everything.
Hasn't it? I know. I just love it. So tell me about, so you run a program called Maine Youth Rock Orchestra.
Yes.
So tell me about.
If you want to say MYRO, MYRO's a little easier to say. Just say
MYRO.
MYRO, it's way easier. A lot easier.
MYRO. That's cool.
Yeah.
So tell me about it. Tell me what it is.
So Maine Youth Rock Orchestra, or MYRO, is it's a 501c3 nonprofit. I started it just about coming up on 5 years in February. And I basically realized there was this gap for students K-12 who are orchestral players. We always work towards the concert, but we don't work towards, a set of life skills as a musician. Mm-hmm. We always work in the classroom, working towards a concert and not looking at how can I use this outside the classroom? How can I learn how to record? How can I learn the right music theory, ear training, but then also applying that to other genres of music. And as a public school teacher formerly and a cellist who toured and played with bands, I wanted to give that opportunity for kids. And so that's where the birth of Maine Youth Rock Orchestra came from. And basically, these are all classically trained students who are violin, viola, cello, bass, and piano. And they have to be classical to get into the group. But then at that point, we partner and share the stage with nationally touring acts. So bands and artists that come through Maine, or we go on tour with them for a little bit, we get to back up their music with a 25 to 27 piece orchestra of students.
Wow, that's cool. So do you ever do original stuff too without the bands, or is it always with bands?
It's always been bands. We have done some cover shows where we play orchestral covers, but we actually have put out one original single. One of our students, who was our pianist 2 years ago, she actually wrote this song called Love Me Again, and she actually wrote the lyrics, the piano part, and all the orchestral parts as well. And then so we took that, and then we went into the studio and recorded it and put that out on Spotify and iTunes back in late 2016.
Wow, that's so great. So I love it because it's helping everyone see that they have more to contribute than just the instrument they play. As well as the fact that, maybe not everybody's going to be a musician when they get out of your program. So you're also talking about those life skills and things that are, more than just, okay, we're doing this thing just to play a concert.
Exactly. And it's really kind of showing students the potential of that direction. If you say you're going to go be a history major, okay, there's so many avenues you can go with that one broad topic. Same with orchestra. You don't have to be just classically trained, but however, having that foundation is what really drives it home and gives you the accessibility and the skill set needed to explore everything else that's out there in the most productive way. I think that's the way to put it.
Yeah, I love that. I love this whole concept. So tell me a story about what got you from I'm a cellist and I play some. I mean, it's unusual that you played with other genres initially anyway, because most classically trained musicians don't. So I want to hear more about that, but also just your story from being an orchestra director in a public school to the realization that you wanted to do this. Like, take us from point A to
Well,
point B here.
and I'll actually back up a little bit. It actually, so I was a Suzuki child, born and raised Suzuki method as a cellist from 4, and then it was late high school that I joined a band playing piano terribly. Uh, but it was my first dive into like learning by ear and trying to figure things out by ear and writing and playing non-classical music. I've always listened to every genre of music, but actually playing it's a different story.
Yeah.
And then college, I played I had a band with this guitarist named George Eisenhower. We called Good News for the Future. It was a guitar and cello duo. But it
I
was
love the name, though. That's a great name.
I don't know where we got it from. Actually, I have no idea. But we wrote some original music together. But that was my first dive into writing original music as a cellist in genres outside classical. And then from that point, that kind of got my foot in the door here in Portland, Maine, where I started playing with bands and writing strings for albums, playing a few live shows, and then I started going down that path a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so I really found that I just found a whole new sense of creativity. I think that's what excited me, like creating something when your whole life has been based around what's already written on the page.
Yeah.
And you kind of realizing, oh, I can do this myself, and I don't have to be just a classical musician.
Yeah.
But then fast forward to teaching public school, I always loved doing covers along with our classical repertoire in our school concerts, teaching it in lessons. And I've always been a huge Electric Light Orchestra fan. So actually I wrote a giant medley of ELO tunes for full symphony orchestra for one of the concerts. Like, here's a band that pioneered having lead cellos as instead of lead guitar in the band, and showing students this has been going on for like 35 years at this point, and
That's
you
cool.
didn't even know about it.
Right.
And
So how did you get to be an orchestra director? I mean, were you an education major?
Yeah, I
Okay.
was a music education major at the University of Southern Maine here in Portland. I had a concentration in cello, and so I knew since 8th grade I wanted to be a music teacher. Like, that never faltered at any point.
Okay.
But what I didn't discover till later on in my career how much I love conducting orchestras. It's one thing teaching; it's one thing conducting an orchestra. So I graduated in 2008. And I got a job 2 days later.
Wow.
Wasn't even planning on it. I graduated. I moved home to my parents' house. Said I don't have a job, and then I got a call. My cousin let me know there was a job opening in this district, and I applied. And I taught kindergarten, first grade general music, and high school orchestra. So immaturity at both levels.
Yeah.
And then slowly transitioned to teaching the whole orchestral program there in upstate. And then I missed Portland. After teaching there in New York for 4 years, I moved back to Portland, Maine in 2012 and taught public school here for 3 years. And I really love teaching at that middle school, high school range because it's a sense of fun, but so much discipline and showing. And you're able to have those conversations about, where you can go in depth about technique and repertoire, and they'll grasp it.
Okay.
But also having a lot of fun. And so that's been really what excites me about teaching, and that's what our youth orchestras are based around, of those age groups. And then and now we teaching students who are that same age range in a concentrated curriculum based around pop rock genres with a classical foundation.
Okay. So what had you leave teaching in schools? Was it?
Yeah. So
what
it was. Well, there was some point I was teaching part-time, and then I wanted to also I was also running the youth orchestra on the side.
Okay.
So, and I was getting to a point where we were gaining traction. I wanted to give it everything I had, and in order to do that, I had to go down. I had just got to go all in.
Right.
I knew the money wasn't going to be there. I knew that I would not be making a salary, and I still don't make a salary. But I mean, it means that I can really pursue this, and it means putting in a lot more blood, tears, and sweat into it all. But
Right.
man, it's just I knew after 1 year in, there's something here. This isn't just a little pet project on the side. This is something that I realized was working.
Right. So where were you getting that info from? I'm sure there's a feeling, like a gut feeling, like you're super happy doing it, but were you getting a lot of feedback from the public or from the participants, or what was that
As far as
informing you?
Oh, like no, I just seeing honestly, it's the students and parents' reaction. So
Okay.
we did our first show. Our first group in the first season was 12 kids in the orchestra. It was not even orchestra. It's basically a chamber group at that point.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of ringers come join us for the first few concerts to kind of fill it out a little more, which is not what I wanted to do, but I wanted to kind of make a sense of, a sense of, I don't know, but I just felt like I wanted to add a few more.
Uh-huh.
And after that first show in May 2014, like I just saw the way the parents got like here they are at their child's concert. They're upstanding, they're dancing, they're singing along, they're moving. The kids are getting humongous cheers, and it's not 99% of the audience are people that are not their family. They're just people who went to go see this concert because they knew the artist
Yeah.
and they wanted to see something different.
So this is a
And
unique experience for everybody involved, including the parents. Like, I mean, how many parents out there have sat through, a concert where you're like, you're hearing something. I mean, let me tell you, I grew up in a family. My parents were not classical musicians, so they had to sit through concerts that they might not necessarily really enjoyed the music.
yeah.
They liked it probably because I was there, doing a thing, and they liked it, but like it wasn't going to be something they were going to get up and dance to at all. You know what I mean? So
And there's a difference between pride and enjoyment. Like you're
right,
always prideful of your child and what they're doing and following their passions. But then when you're truly like not enjoying it for your child, when you're enjoying it for the product that it is, then that's something that benefits everybody on a larger scale. And I've just
right,
seen when parents get excited, we're going back on tour in April 2019. We're going to do an East Coast tour. We did this back in 2016. And when I have parents who are like eager to be chaperones for this tour, and when I like the kids are just beyond excited to go and actually it brings this on the road, it's a sign that something's working and that they're connecting. And
yeah,
I've just been blown away by the level of confidence and professionalism these students have. They walk off stage like they are just on top of the world, regardless of whatever happened that day at home, their friend group, online, whatever. They walk off that stage and they're just like, it just kind of took all that weight off them and gave them a new sense of confidence.
that's incredible. So I'm really hearing you talk a lot about audience. Like, I mean, just how important that is. And I think, oh my God, like as a youth orchestra member, do you think I ever thought, I mean, even as a professional classical musician, I never thought about the audience. The audience was just a foregone conclusion. They're out there, they're whoever they are. I don't know. I'm here to do my things, very self-centered. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And so this seems like it's blowing off the walls of like that whole kind of antiquated way of operating.
And one thing that's been a hard transition from those who have been purely classically trained to going and joining our group and those audience members that follow along is that, as a classical audience member, you're meant to sit quietly, still, listen, and clap at the end,
Yeah.
rather than clapping, cheering in the moment, and just taking it all and reacting in the moment
Yeah.
to what's happening on stage. There's this one moment. There's actually this past September 1st, we played a festival called Ghostland here at Portland, Maine, and it was about 3,500 people were there in the audience.
Whoa.
And yeah, it was outdoor festival, and we played this one song with a band called Ghost of Paul Revere, a song called Chrysalides, and the whole outro is just the orchestra, and like the band's playing, but it's all focusing on the orchestra, and like I'm getting giddy about it right now. Like I've never in my life heard a crowd cheer like that. And
Wow.
like they were just going nuts, and it was the most fulfilling feeling on my end. Like they deserve this. Like they worked their butts off to get to this point, and they're getting the satisfaction in the moment from an audience who 99% are not there for the students. They're there for the overall experience, but
Right.
they gave the biggest cheer of the whole night to the students. So I think that's right there. That's like, okay, something's working, and we're now building these students to be something greater, whether it's through music or not. Like they're just
Right.
they're getting that confidence to take themselves to the next level.
Yeah, that's so impressive. So you mentioned classical musicians who are completely like coming from a background of completely 100% classical trained, and that there's a small transition. Do they still think that I think a lot of times classical musicians, and myself included, put ourselves into this like box of, I can do this one thing, and if I say I'm going to do this thing, that means I'm not doing the other thing anymore. So, do you have a thing where people feel like, oh, now I'm not classical anymore or whatever, or is it kind of built in like, hey guys, you can do whatever you want?
I think it's becoming more of that. After we launched a podcast through the youth orchestra called Redefine Rock, and every time, almost, these are all classically trained musicians who have now gone off and played with, Britney Spears, Beyonce, Foo Fighters, things like that. But I always ask, like, what has been the reaction from the classical community about like going off and doing the other genres, and you're no longer being labeled as much. The big term is classical crossover, but if you're still doing classical music, it doesn't really, you're just being a musician, just being a violinist or a violist or a cellist. I think it's mattering a lot less. Because I think everybody's seeing the value in exploring. And I think that's been the really thing to see.
Yeah, well, I would personally like to see that matter a lot less, because it limits people's creativity. Like the fact that somebody in your orchestra wrote a song, a piece for you guys is just like she's saying, hey, I don't have to just be a player. I can be a composer. I can do whatever, So I really like that so much. So, wow, I just love what you're doing. It's so exciting. So how do you know the bands? Do you know a lot of them personally, or how do you navigate that?
It started off with just Portland-based bands, and luckily there's been a great pool. Our first artist, his name's Lyle Davinsky. He's now the lead singer of a band called the Motet, which is based in Denver, Colorado now. They now sell out Red Rocks every single year as a headliner. So it started off with local bands, and then it grew. The band we worked the most with is a band from Boston called the Ballroom Thieves. And we've done the most work. They're the ones we toured with back in 2016. We've done some NPR features with them, and we've gone on the road with them a bunch. But I walked up to them at a show of theirs back in late 2013, before I even launched the organization. And I'm like, hey, I'm trying to start this thing. Would you ever want to come? Because they have a cellist in the band. So I'm like, do you ever want to come do a workshop? And they said, oh, we would love to in a heartbeat. And so that turned from a workshop into our first show. And then they invited another band onto the show and another band onto the show. And so like it became this community. They got to see slowly what we were bringing to the table. Because even though you hear youth orchestra, sometimes it's viewed as not quality or not high level, and that's not the case. I push hard, and I expect excellence every single time. So they've seen that level of what the students bring to the table for concerts. So then at that point it became word of mouth, and we grew more and more. The three biggest artists we played with are Guster. We played with him last summer. Gregory Alan Isaacoff, the singer-songwriter from Portland, Oregon, and then John Starrett, who's one of the co-founders of Wilco. And so we played with him this summer. Wow. And so and that's also been like, all three of those were them reaching out to us. It was not vice versa.
Interesting.
So that was the first time where it was like, okay, something's working.
Yeah. So who arranges the music?
Up until 2 months ago, it was me. Up until 2 months ago, I've done everything except for Guster and Gregory Alan Isaacoff. Those were already pre-written charts from like 2005 to 2008 by another composer named Jay Clifford. But I at this point, basically, I've been a one-man machine. I do all the arranging, all the social media, all the rehearsals, everything. But then we were able to hire our first part-time employee this summer, and then I have another intern whose focus is in composition. So the two of them have been really taking on the role of writing all the music, which is they are much better at than I am. So I'm more than happy to have them do that. So
that's awesome. Yes. Well, let's go back to the founding steps. So did you initially go, okay, I'm going to start a 501c3 right away, or did you just say, let's get some kids together and start playing some rock music and see what happens? Like, what was the first step?
I wanted to launch it like as soon as possible, but then I realized that the 501c3 status is a long process.
Oh, okay.
So it takes you about a year to maximum to get your status from the time you file to actually getting it.
Oh, okay.
So it's a process. I'm like, I don't want to wait that long.
Right.
But so then there was another local nonprofit music school that was looking to expand their programming, and I'm like, hey, I want to start this thing up. And so they were a great they're the ones that gave us that foundation and a space to do it. And so
Meaning they let you raise money under their name, or
yeah,
okay.
we became a program of theirs.
Okay.
We weren't our own nonprofit. That we became a program of their rock school, and then at that point, 2 years in, I'm like, okay, I want to take this bigger than just Maine or over the time. And so in order to do that, I have to become my own nonprofit. So at that point, we had enough credibility, and I had all the proof of documentation. And then so in 2016, July 2016, we became our own organization.
Okay.
And then 2017 is when we officially became a nonprofit organization.
Wow. Okay. So from the moment that you had like a little group together, what year was that again? 2015?
2014 was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're right. This is a long building process. So you're operating in a little like a rock music school. Was that like a place where you could get guitar lessons and stuff like that?
Exactly. They were purely a rock band based organization, and the awesome enrollment, but they wanted to expand their programming. So I said I'd love to bring in the string element to it, and it was a bumpy start as far as getting kids enrolled. Luckily,
Right.
I taught at schools in Maine and at camps in Maine for a long time, so I already had that foot in the door with getting kids interested.
Yeah. And then you just had to get people interested by talking them up, right? Constantly.
Talking about then saying also to new families, come check out our shows. Like, don't say come out to my school concert. Like, come to our shows, and they're all ages all the time. And so we're playing venues as small as 150 people and as large as 7,000 people. We're doing the whole spectrum.
Wow.
But it took that initial foundation of them giving us the ability to operate under their umbrella.
Okay.
And then that got our foundation, and then from that point we launched our own nonprofit in 2016.
Okay. So that's like we're talking 3 years until you're 2 years.
Yeah, 2 years we became our own business. 3 years till we actually got our status. But it was a long journey, and also and getting a board of directors that you believe in,
Right.
and getting donors at that point. And that's still every single day. That's a struggle. My board's wonderful, but like getting donors to the door and believing in something, it's a lot of work, but it's absolutely worth it every single day.
Yeah, that's so great. And so, did you ever have a moment where you're like, "Oh, I'm not going to get this off the ground," or were you just constantly positive? Because you seem like you're a really
No.
positive person, but
Yeah, no, I've had a lot of doubt moments, 100%. Like, again, if you don't, as a business owner, like, you're not doing it right. You got you should. Oh, I think doubt's the wrong word. There are going to be the dark days. There are going to be the days where you're like, is this the right move?
Right.
Oh, all like 5 things went wrong today. Is this the right move? But it's just one day. It will all
Right.
fix in the end. But rather than, I think, wallowing in it, I think you have to kind of pull it up by the straps and say, like, I'm going to own this. Okay. And a lot of time when you're a business of one, it's your fault. When something goes wrong, it's something you did wrong. And then how are you going to take that responsibility?
Right. Look inward instead of like, oh, it's everyone else's fault for not buying into this.
100%.
Like, what didn't you do right in that sales pitch or that, conversation or whatever?
And as long as you're willing to take responsibility for the shortfalls of your organization, and say, how can I learn from this? That's the huge step. So, and that's where I get really excited. I get excited in the failures, because like, I learn at what I did wrong and how do I find the new direction to make it even better for the next step.
Yeah, that's great. And you know what? Another really valuable message through here is the patience, because as I'm seeing, like, I mean, I discovered you like a few months ago, you know what I mean, on Instagram, but you've been at it for a good solid 3 or 4 years,
Yeah, and it's hard. It's hard being patient. Patience is the game, and that's so. I think that's the hardest part. Like, you want to, like, when you believe in it, and you have kids that believe in it, family that believe in it, your staff believes in it.
Yeah.
But yet you're trickling along. It's a long game. Like, it's the rarity where it happens in 2 years. It's. So I look for that long-term goal of, like, I know what's down the road. I know what this can become. And I know that's still in Maine. Like, I started in one of the hardest states to do this, because there are only 10 public school programs, 10 public and private school programs in the entire state.
Oh, wow. I know.
Yeah,
Imagine if this was like in Texas or something. You know what I mean? Like,
Texas or Tennessee or Atlanta has a ton and
yeah,
Chicago. Like if I went to major markets, it'd be a whole different story.
yeah.
Um, but I'm actually really excited that I started here in Maine because I can showing like what different why it's good, like why doing something different is good, which Maine does not like different as a state. We're
Right.
comfortable.
Yeah.
So breaking the mold and doing something new is what excites me.
That's so great. So it sounds like you do have your eyes set on expansion.
I do. I do. We had our first couple inquiries over the past year or so, people that want to launch these in their prospective states, and then so we are looking to over the course of next year rebrand to American Youth Rock Orchestra, become this national nonprofit, and not franchise out, but just open more branches across the country, and
So you would be, still operating like with creative input for these other branches, but then, I mean, you'd probably have to help people get the bands too,
yeah.
right? Like
So
you would be like the hub for the bands who are interested in playing with orchestra and stuff like that.
100%. So it'd be more taken of an admin role and kind of the liaison of going to each of these places. But I've just seen what it's done. It's built community like I've never seen before, and especially in orchestral curriculum for schools and for music ed in general. It's just I'm like so blown away by and humbled by like how much people support it. They see the value in it, and I think it excites me to launch in other states and make this a long-term goal to really share this with the entire country.
That's so cool. So have you had kids come up to you who don't play instruments and say like, I want to be part of the rock band orchestra? Like,
So I've had a few like drummers say, "Can we join the orchestra?" I'm like, it doesn't work because of orchestra. We need, and levels wise, we need a certain number of strings. We need a certain number of string players to balance out one drum set. So it's gonna be down the road a lot more, but. I think we're actually launching our first in-school program early next year. We're actually starting to do a bunch more school immersion programs. We just got some grant funding to do that, and so now we are looking at really taking it to the next level.
okay, so what does that mean? Like you start the program within a school?
Yeah, so basically, like we are going to partner with either schools that have an existing string program or schools that have zero string program and help orchestra programs and help them either launch it or take it to the next level. Because we want to make it viable, and we want to kind of be that resurgence for Maine orchestra programs and help bring it back to life.
Getting into the schools, that sounds like something pretty awesome. I mean,
I'm
now you can impact like music education at the school source.
And that's our long-term goal, is not just be something that's an after-school activity, nighttime activity, but to actually bring it into the schools and support kids throughout the day.
That's great. That's great. And you're also what you're doing is, which is cool, is bringing orchestra to these bands audiences that would never have normally seen an orchestra. So like you described at the end, the outro that was like really long and the audience was going nuts because they're experiencing that what we already know and love as musicians and orchestras, like how great that sound is.
Yeah,
when it's happening.
And it's also like the second you hear like a band that you love accompanied by an orchestra, whether it's professional or a youth orchestra, like your ears are perked up and you want to go, like you want to check it out.
Yeah, I I was in high school when Guns N' Roses did that with what was it? The song about rain. What was it? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, not November
Rain. Yes, and there was like an orchestra in that song.
Yeah.
So
it's just kind of taking now and then taking that kind of professional aspect of it, and then now that orchestra is now students. Like, and my favorite comment from parents and communities is I wish I had this when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And that line every single time is like, okay, I'm doing something right. It's going to be a long journey, but I'm doing something right.
Yeah. You know what? Like I'm thinking of that November Rain song because of the video and how cool that video was, and they showed the conducting in that. Like, I mean, there's so much possibility for kids who want to get into video production and all these. I'm sure you've already thought of all these things, and I'm just like,
oh yeah. And one thing we do, so we put out 3 or 4 music videos today. We have a documentary series from our tour in 2016.
Oh, that's great.
And
where is this stuff?
It's either all on YouTube or on our
Okay.
website at rockorchestras.org.
Nice.
And then we actually just posted our documentary series also to Instagram TV, so it's on there now as well.
Oh, that's so great.
But it's also showing them my big thing is doing this experience in high school. We kind of, for sports, you might have trophies, ribbons, things from your game, but like there's no real documentation of something you did in music in high school after high school.
Right.
So what I do for every student when they graduate, they get a digital resume of everything they've done through Maine Youth Rock Orchestra. So they on our website, they get their own personal web page with every show they've played, every recording session they've done, every music video they've done, everything they've been featured in. And so that way they can take that with them wherever they go and it'll always be there.
Oh, wow, that's really cool. That's really great because then they can have something to point to, a body of work that they can point to.
And it becomes their resume for if they want to go do music, they can say, here's what I did in high school. Like, and then they look at that like, oh, you're actually legit. And so it gives them that foundation and that confidence. And that's where a lot of it stems from.
Yeah. So let's go back to that audience. I keep bringing back to the audience thing.
Yeah.
But with the students and their own, like right now the audience is coming from the rock bands mostly and also families of the kids playing in the orchestra. Do the kids have an opportunity to build their audience too, like to help contribute to building the audience for MYRO?
They do. I haven't seen it a lot. Like I give them all the materials as far as like building their own social media channels and like, and putting themselves out there. A few of the kids do play in their own bands now as well. And like they write original music and they have their own band accounts and everything. But it's like they have access to all our photos, all our videos, everything like that. And I think the next step is for me to kind of guide them, teach them how to do social media marketing and how to put themselves out there, which is a huge aspect of being a professional musician. That's the next step. We focus a lot on the music of it all, and now the next step is to
bring in that business stuff.
Really kind of
bring
do
in
the
that business stuff.
That's
really actually what's missing in every music
program
education.
starting from day one.
Program starting from provided,
day one,
and then
you
go to music
provided,
school, and then
you major in
go to
music,
music school.
and that never
you major in
gets
music,
brought up
and
again.
That never
Unless you're a music
gets brought up
business
again.
major.
So
Unless you're a music
that's
business
good that
major,
that's
so
on your mind.
That's good that that's on your mind.
Yeah, because that's a huge part of. I mean, I've learned all this just from experience. No one taught it to me. It was all figure it out on my own, and then it was basically all my life lessons from messing up all these times. And so
absolutely.
Yeah.
So what if someone's listening right now and they're like,
someone's listening right now and they're like,
I want to build something like how can they contact you if they want to?
How can they contact you?
Are you at the point right now where you're
are you at the point right now where you're
helping people set up programs in their own
helping
schools,
people set up
or
programs
own
in their own
orchestras,
schools,
or
own
is this something
youth
down the
orchestras,
line?
or is this something down the line?
It's something. It's about a year or so down the line.
Okay.
I think at this point, I'd like those people who are interested in launching them in their states. Basically, it's not like if you're interested, you're going to get the job and that's it. Like I know my vision. I know what I want to do.
So you want to sort of curate it,
reach out to people before they reach out to you, or
no. What I would like to see is like I want them to reach out if they're interested. Then I want to have those conversations first and explore like why those markets needed this. Why should they be the ones spearheading it? What do they bring to the table? Do they have the experience working with or playing with bands, or they just classically have that classical foundation? So there's a lot of things in play, but I just backing up to what you originally asked was how do they reach out? They can just go right through a website. And honestly, I'll be so humbled if someone wants to reach out and start something, because it's to me like the fact that someone wants to share the vision with you.
Yeah,
I'm always willing to have the conversation any day. So, and it just excites me that this one I can't wait to see what happens next.
Yeah. So tell me more about what you have coming up.
Tell me more about what you have coming up. So
tell me about your concerts coming up. Tell me about your upcoming season.
So we actually from now and through June we have 15 more shows. So we actually, our next run is a Beatles night tribute that we've done. It's been existing in Portland, Maine for 16 years. It was actually got a write-up in Rolling Stone 5 years ago.
Wow.
Basically it's all Portland musicians recreating Beatles to the T, strings and horns, but no costumes. It's just focusing on just the music. And so that we do that for 3 nights, November 23rd to 25th. And then we do a weekend with a chamber orchestra from Boston called Palaver Strings. And they are a nonprofit as well. And we're doing a side-by-side concert with them featuring some covers, some works by Daniel Bernard Romaine. And then we're going to be doing the second half of the program. We will all be accompanying a pianist named Ben Cosgrove, who writes all his music based on landscapes he sees.
Oh, no.
So it'll be our first instrumental concert. We'll be doing that both outside Boston at the Shaolin Liu in Rockport, Massachusetts, and then also here in Portland, Maine. In January, we'll be doing a weekend run with Darlingside, who is a quartet from Boston, Massachusetts, who's violin, cello, bass, and guitar. And then 4-part harmonies. And then from that point, we start prepping for our spring tour in April, where we'll be doing 8 days on the road and 7 shows in that timeline.
And you bring the bands with you, or do you meet the bands? Okay.
Nope. The bands travel in their van, but we all caravan to the same city. So it'll be a different city every night. Across from here to DC, from Maine to DC.
Hey, wait, you mentioned horns? Hey, wait, when you do the Beatles thing? Horns. Are you going to branch this out to winds and brass too? Are you going to branch this out to winds and brass too?
100%. All depends on balance, though. Again, like one trumpet can blow out 40 strings, so it needs to have enough string players to balance out levels wise. But I've been itching for winds and brass. I mean, a full orchestra, that sound is unreal. It's unmatched.
Of course, I think that as a horn player. Of course, I think that as a horn player.
I'm itching for a full symphony in each place and down the road. So like that's kind of the goal. So I mean, it's just a symphony orchestra. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Such a good sound.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us all about your stuff. And I agree with you. I think this is going to blow up, honestly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's really great.
Thank you for having me, and like super humbled to share the story, and just I'm looking forward to what's ahead.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Thanks for joining me today. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to Crushing Classical on Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you enjoy listening to your podcasts. And also, don't forget to join the conversation on Facebook at facebook.com/crushingclassical and Instagram at Crushing Classical, where I post my thoughts and advice about the process of creating your own unique career. New on Instagram. If you are someone who has created your own ensemble, orchestra, music festival, or series, you are Crushing Classical, which means you're evolving the genre and making an impact in classical music. Shout it loud and proud and use the hashtag Crushing Classical on your beautiful posts for a chance to be featured on my profile. Thanks for listening. See you next time.